Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. Today, it's going to be SummerSlam 2011, one of my favorite pay-per-views, one of my favorite SummerSlams of all time. So I'm very happy and excited to review it for you here today. Just recently watched it back on the network, so my memory is fresh when it comes to this show. We'll kick it off with the opening tag team contest, six-man tag team action, pitting Kofi Kingston, John Morrison, and Rey Mysterio against Awesome Truth, The Miz, and R-Truth, as well as, who was the third guy, Alberto Del Rio. So this was an unadvertised contest. I remember going into the show, I was very disappointed that, and also, before I even get any further, I just want to point this out. This is a pay-per-view that I've watched, and I know I said at the beginning of when I started doing WrestleRant that I will try to watch pay-per-views that I've never seen before, and try to review them for you here on the channel, but I kind of scratched that after a while because I wanted to watch back pay-per-views that I have seen before, because I kind of want to relive the memories, but I have yet to review it here on the channel. Actually, that is also a lie, because I have reviewed it here on the channel before. If you go back to my early editions of WrestleRant, I don't know, WrestleRant 4 or 5 or something from 3 years ago, it's here on the channel, actually, believe it or not. I did review SummerSlam 2011 when it happened. I think either the next day or the day after that, so if you want to get my thoughts on the show from immediately after it happened, you can actually go back on the channel. It's right here on WrestleRant. I don't know what number it was, but you can go back and check it out. It's actually pretty funny to look back on it now. But that being said, though, this is a fresh look with a fresh set of eyes at SummerSlam, looking back 3 years later. But anyway, kicking off the show, six-man tag team action, Kofi Kingston, John Morrison, and Rey Mysterio taking on The Miz, Alberto Del Rio, and R-Truth. An unadvertised contest. I remember being very disappointed going into the show that none of these guys were booked, specifically Alberto Del Rio, who was the Raw Money in the Bank winner at the time, ready to cash in for a WWE Championship match at any time of his choosing. Rey Mysterio, the former WWE Champion, who had to lose the WWE title within an hour to John Cena on Monday Night Raw on July 25th, 2011. Also reviewed that episode of Raw a couple of weeks ago on my video blog. Check it out if you will. Shameless plug. And also, I really wanted to see John Morrison and R-Truth face off in a singles match on the show, but WWE, oddly enough, in a very stupid decision, they gave that match away like 6 days early on Raw with R-Truth coming over clean. So that was mind-boggling to me. R-Truth and John Morrison had a pretty good feud going. They started feuding when R-Truth went heel in April of that year. John Morrison took some time off to undergo, I think, neck surgery, if I recall correctly. Came back with a head of steam, was beating up R-Truth, and the first night in, R-Truth got the better of him at every point from that point forward. John Morrison would lose that match to R-Truth on the Raw before SummerSlam. So the booking of John Morrison was extremely odd. It might have something to do with Melina and her release from the company and all that kind of bullshit. So that really sucks, but I was really hoping to see them collide in singles action. But we did get them on the show in the six-man tag team match, and the best fitting part of the show possible to kick off these six superstars from Raw. The face team went over. Rey Mysterio got the pin for his team. Very fitting since not only A, were they in California, his home state, but he was also going to be contending for the WWE title the very next night on Raw, and the winner, or whoever would walk out of SummerSlam, as the undisputed WWE champion. So it was only logical to give Rey Mysterio the win here and have him build some momentum going into the next night's Raw, where he would contend in a rematch for the WWE Championship. And Del Rio, this would not be the last time that we would see Del Rio later on in the night. And also, Awesome Truth. This is not the official debut of Awesome Truth. They would not officially debut as a tandem until 8 days later. But to see them interact on the show was pretty cool. And Miz's pre-match promo about complaining about being in the main event of WrestleMania to not being even on the SummerSlam card at all was pretty hysterical. So Miz was still in his peak at this point during his main event run, even though he had dropped the WWE title months early. So great way to kick off the show. Got much more time than it had any right to. In the sense that I thought it would only go 4 or 5 minutes, ended up getting about 10. So a great way to kick off the show. Babyfaces pick up the victory. Up next, we continue on with Mark Henry against Sheamus in a very interesting clash of the Titans. Now, this was not the first ever one-on-one meeting between Mark Henry and Sheamus. They had had several contests in the past against one another on Raw, and I believe 2010, I want to say. And they'd also clashed. Now, that was the first time actually on the SmackDown brand that they had clashed. But Sheamus had gone fan favorite only a few months before this, only a few weeks before this actually, setting up this contest, and Mark Henry being built up as this unstoppable monster of a man during the midst of the biggest push of his career, being heading towards that big World Heavyweight Championship picture run that he would eventually go. He would eventually enter the World Heavyweight Championship picture only a few months later after. It's only about a few weeks later. So it was only logical to continue that momentum. And it was very odd because I remember going into this thinking that both guys had a head of momentum right now. And it was really hard to pick a winner. Like I said, Mark Henry was on the roll of his career as the top heel in the company and getting ready to contend for the World Heavyweight Championship. And on the other hand, you had Sheamus, who had just recently gone babyface, and he was also extremely over. People really wanted to see him put Mark Henry in his place. So it was really hard to book a winner here, and WWE did the best booking decision possible by having Mark Henry go over via countout, cleanly too. He didn't even cheat at all, with a World's Strongest Slam through the barricade. An awesome spot. Mark Henry picks up the win, ends the match looking like a fucking beast, and continues to carry on with all of his momentum going into his World Heavyweight Championship run a couple of months later. And only, like I said, only about a month later was he contending for the world title against Randy Orton, Night of Champions. So a really good showing from Mark Henry here, and Sheamus, a much better match than I thought it would be, considering that their past matches weren't really anything that lit the world on fire. But for what this was, I thought it was a good contest, and accomplished what it set out to do in continuing Mark Henry's momentum as well as protecting Sheamus in the process. And something that always bothered me was that I really wanted to see Mark Henry win here, in which he did via countout. And then the subsequent SmackDown, I think it was on the subsequent SmackDown, they had a SummerSlam rematch, and Sheamus would go over in that contest also via countout. And what really bothered me, that there was never really a finish to this feud. They really just kind of left it at that because Mark Henry went on to contend for the World Championship, which was understandable, and I was completely content with that. If anything, I was ecstatic about it. And then they really just never went back to that feud. Granted, one would argue that they went back to that feud in 2013 in that terrible strap match at Extreme Rules. I never really considered that the blow-off to this feud from 2011. But what I was really hoping for was for Mark Henry to win the World Championship, in which he would, but to go on to contend against Sheamus either at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view or even at WrestleMania as World Heavyweight Champion. But as we would soon find out, they would drop the ball on Mark Henry's push to his World Champion by taking the title off of him only within 3 months. And I thought it was a terrible booking decision for Mark Henry to beat him, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. But anyway, good matchup for Mark Henry and Sheamus at SummerSlam. Up next, we continue on with the Divas Championship matchup between Kelly and Beth Phoenix. Now, on the number one Contenders Battle Royal a couple of weeks earlier, Beth Phoenix eliminated single-handedly the Bella Twins in a match which a lot of people thought Eve would win, considering that she was Kelly's best friend. She was getting the most TV time aside from the Divas champion Kelly herself. So it only made sense to do Kelly versus Eve at SummerSlam. So when Beth Phoenix emerged victorious and we got that match at SummerSlam instead, it made things 10 times more interesting, considering the fact that Beth Phoenix would also turn heel, align with Natalya, and create and form the Divas of Doom. So it made this matchup one of the most anticipated Divas Championship matches in recent history, which is not saying much, but it really made this matchup mean something going in SummerSlam. And the matchup itself was a lot better, like I said with the other two matches, like with Mark Henry and Sheamus. This matchup was a lot better than a lot of people thought it would be, myself included. I thought we were going to get a 2-minute shit fest, considering Kelly is not the greatest in-ring worker. She is pretty bad, actually, and her selling is terrible. I think that goes without saying. But Beth Phoenix managed to get a great match out of her. And it takes two to tango, and I give credit to Kelly for having a great showing here. Arguably the best match of her career. But with that being said, though, it really was a shocker when Kelly would have emerged victorious after pinning Beth Phoenix via a roll-up. And it's a finish that's been done to death, especially with Kelly. So that kind of not really killed the feud. I wouldn't say they really killed the feud until Night of Champions when they were in Beth Phoenix's hometown of Buffalo, New York, and she would lose again there to Kelly. That kind of bothered me, but for what this was, it prolonged the feud. It kept Kelly going strong as Divas champion, and it protected Beth Phoenix. So I thought this matchup accomplished everything it set out to do. I enjoyed it. One of the best Divas matches of 2011. Once again, not saying much, but it was a very good matchup from Beth Phoenix and Kelly. Only went about 6 minutes, but I'm glad it wasn't a 3-minute shit fest where Kelly went over decisively and not setting up the need for a rematch at Night of Champions. So once again, much better match than I thought it would be, considering Kelly was involved. So in between matches here, I don't know if it was in between this match and the next match, or Mark Henry and Sheamus in between that match and the Divas title match. I'm not exactly sure, but we did get a concert from CeeLo Green on this show, singing the theme for this pay-per-view, which personally one of my favorite themes of all time for any WWE pay-per-view. Maybe it's just me here, and I posted this on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people agreed, and that Bright Lights Bigger City by CeeLo Green fit this pay-per-view to a T, and it was so great. I thought it was awesome. Granted, the live performance of it was not exactly the same as hearing it on your iPod or on the TV or in the build to the matchup or the pay-per-view, I'm sorry. It's not exactly the same, but it was still very cool to hear. I love this song. I still listen to it to this day. It kind of fits the summer season. Not only SummerSlam, but I think the summer itself, I think, is very fitting of the summer season. So I love this song, and to hear it live, and I mean, I wasn't there live, but to hear it on the show, I thought was awesome. And like I said before, one of my favorite pay-per-view themes to this day. And he would also perform Forget You. I mean, granted, it was Fuck You, but they can't really perform that in the PG environment. But anyway, he performed that song. Not my favorite song, but I did enjoy Bright Lights Bigger City. It was a filler segment. It did not come off great live, but I really still enjoyed it considering it was an awesome song and one of my favorite pay-per-view themes of all time. So up next, we had Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan. And now this matchup was stemming off their interaction at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view from a month prior when Daniel Bryan was on the verge of winning the SmackDown Money in the Bank briefcase. He would knock Wade Barrett, an ex-Nexus member who we would have history with from NXT. He would knock him off the ladder and grab the briefcase to become the Mr. Money in the Bank, setting up this matchup at SummerSlam. Now, the fans in attendance weren't really receptive to this contest for a variety of reasons. One, they probably had no idea it was happening because the build, it was there. You know, Bryan and Barrett had a few promos against one another going into the show. Very few, but the build was there. And not only that, but the matchup was not announced officially for the card until maybe 48 hours before the show on that Friday or even the Saturday before, which was really disappointing. But with that being said, though, I was glad it happened at all. And also the fact they were also not all that receptive toward this contest was given the fact that Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan, I mean, you look at Daniel Bryan now, he's one of the most over fucking people in the company, considering the fact that this whole yes chant, and the guy is so fucking over. It's just hard to imagine that 3 years prior that no one was reacting to his matches at all. It's not really surprising, though, because at the time he didn't really have a gimmick. He was just a guy who was a great wrestler. Same thing with Wade Barrett. They really killed his momentum with the whole Nexus bullshit and how they... I mean, I love the Nexus, but I mean, the way that they botched the booking of that Sable in late 2010 really bothered me, and he was unable to really, maintain that momentum going into 2011 with the whole core, and God knows how bad that bullshit was. And he was really trying to rebuild his momentum going into the summer of 2011, and this matchup really helped establish that. And I thought Daniel Bryan would go over, but it was ultimately Wade Barrett. And this was one of those matches that I think is vastly overlooked and is very underrated. And I know it was not the most exciting matchup in terms of entertainment, because like I said before, they were not playing to the crowd, there was no gimmicks. It was like a Ring of Honor match in that it was just wrestling. It was great, entertaining, enjoyable wrestling, and that's why I really love this matchup. And I don't think Daniel Bryan and Wade Barrett, to this day, get enough credit for this contest. And they wouldn't collide in singles competition much after this. Wade Barrett would go on to do the Barrett Barrage. Daniel Bryan would go on to become World Heavyweight Champion. And they did have a nice series of matches over on Raw and SmackDown, respectively, last summer. Granted, those matches didn't really mean much as well, but I really did enjoy those because Daniel Bryan and Wade Barrett have great chemistry together. And they're both currently out with injuries, but when they do, resurface on the roster, I would love to see have them go another go at it. Whether they both be baby faces or whether they're, Wade Barrett's the heel again and Daniel Bryan's the baby face. I think this is a feud that needs to be reestablished, needs to be reinvigorated because their chemistry is off the charts. They work so well together that I think they deserve another shot at it. So with that being said, great matchup, very underrated. Definitely go check this matchup out if you don't know what great wrestling is and watch this matchup. So we get to the main event matches. Out firstly for the World Heavyweight Championship. No disqualifications, no countouts. It's no holds barred, baby. World Heavyweight Championship matchup, Christian versus Randy Orton. And I've made no bones about this. And it's no secret that Randy Orton versus Christian is one of my favorite, if not my favorite feud of all time. Randy Orton and Christian had one of the best series of matches over the course of the summer of 2011. It's absolutely unreal how great this the chemistry was, the in-ring chemistry was between Randy Orton and Christian. And I mean, one can argue and how Christian was given the World Championship for only a few days, and that was bullshit, and how he had a shitty 1 month reign as World Heavyweight Champion. But the fact that Christian was World Champion at all in 2011 was enough for me to mark the fuck out, because I thought this was great. But the matches made up for it, because I thought this was awesome. Christian was promoting going into this contest that he would have backup. He had the quote-unquote best thing going. So out came the Rated R Superstar Edge, and I had predicted that Jericho was going to come out, or Tyson Tomko, or whoever else. But Edge would come out, and maintaining his babyface persona, would say that Christian was really nothing more than a whining, sniveling bitch. To a big pop, he would walk off. I had a small suspicion that he would come back and help Christian win, but that would ultimately not be the case. But even so, though, Randy Orton and Christian had a kick-ass matchup, and it's really a toss-up for the best Randy Orton and Christian matchup between this contest and the one at Over the Limit, another pay-per-view that I did review here on the channel for WrestleRant. So go back and check that out when you get a second. It's an awesome matchup, not the pay-per-view, but yeah, that's a shameless plug right there. But it really is a toss-up, because I thought their Over the Limit pay-per-view and match, and this contest as well at SummerSlam, I thought were both stellar. And even though this one had no holds barred, and they incorporated a lot of extreme spots, and they made the great use of the extreme environment, so I thought this was just an awesome matchup from start to finish. And like I said, the chemistry between these two speaks for itself. Randy Orton going over in the same fashion that he won his first World Championship against Christian, not against Chris Benoit, but against Christian months earlier, when Christian went up to the top rope looking for that sunset flip. Randy Orton would instead catch him with an RKO on the steel steps. So a nice callback to the first start of their feud from May of that year. So I thought that was great. Randy Orton, your new World Heavyweight Champion. I was not all that excited about Randy Orton once again becoming the World Heavyweight Champion, but as it would soon turn out, it was only temporary thing. He was only a paper champion, so to speak, as he would go on to drop that world championship to Mark Henry at the Night of Champions pay-per-view. So a fucking awesome matchup from Christian and Orton. And then we get to the main event between CM Punk and John Cena 2, and a sequel to their contest, their epic contest, might I add, from Money in the Bank 1 month prior. Now, of course, the storyline behind this matchup is really no secret. CM Punk had returned to the WWE only 8 days removed from leaving, with still the WWE title in tow. John Cena, in the meantime, had won a tournament. He actually did not win the tournament. He beat the winner of the tournament, Rey Mysterio, to win back the WWE Championship, thus setting up the champion versus champion matchup at SummerSlam. And WWE was billing this as it was the first time in WWE history that they had two legitimate WWE champions simultaneously. So it made this matchup that much more meaningful, much more impactful, and much more memorable. If it had to be anyway, because this matchup involves CM Punk and John Cena. That's all you need. All you need is John Cena and CM Punk to have a great matchup, and that's exactly what this was. I still say that it's really a toss-up between their Money in the Bank matchup and that matchup. They're actually what would end up being their final contest on that February 25th episode of Raw from 2013. Those matches were both stellar in terms of, one matchup had the better wrestling, which I thought was their final match in 2013, and their Money in the Bank matchup had the better story and the overall environment and stuff like that. But that being said, I thought this matchup was also very, very good in terms of being a great wrestling contest. The kicking out of the finishers down the stretch, I thought was also very suspenseful, because it could have gone either way. I know CM Punk was, riding a wave of momentum at the time, but they could have easily had him lose here and just give John Cena back the championship that he claimed he never lost. So with that being said, though, I thought this was a great contest. CM Punk went over after he hit the GTS on John Cena. His foot would be underneath the rope, and CM Punk still your WWE champion, or the new undisputed champion, however you really look at it. So John Cena had really a reason to be mad, because he was kind of screwed out of the championship by the special guest referee Triple H. And I personally believed that Triple H, as the special guest referee, would turn heel in some form or fashion, turning on CM Punk and setting up the feud between those two. That would not happen on this show. Ironically enough, it would happen, or coincidentally enough, I mix those words up often, it was coincidentally enough 3 years later that Triple H would turn heel as the special guest referee, not during the matchup, but after the main event matchup between John Cena and Daniel Bryan on a pay-per-view. Or not 3 years later, 2 years later, at SummerSlam 2013. I'll be reviewing that pay-per-view next week, or later this week, or whatever. So, be sure to stay tuned for that later on in the week, so shameless plug there. But, yeah, CM Punk goes over with some controversy. Out comes Kevin Nash, as Michael Cole said on commentary. And also Booker T said on commentary, which had me fucking cracking up from the first time he said it to even now when I watch it back. Kevin Nash, that's my big homie, which still cracks me up to this day. Considering their history from, TNA and the Main Event Mafia, I thought that was fucking awesome. But anyway, though, Kevin Nash comes out, powerbombs CM Punk which sets up Del Rio coming down, cashing the Money in the Bank briefcase, knocking out CM Punk with a kick to the head, and being crowned the new WWE champion and fulfilling his self-proclaimed fantasy destiny as the WWE champion. So, wow, just a way to go off the show with Kevin Nash making his grand return to television. Whether you like that or not is really up to personal opinion. And Del Rio being crowned the new WWE champion on this show. The Kevin Nash thing I was marking the fuck out for because I thought it was great. It was supposed to set up CM Punk versus Kevin Nash at the Night of Champions pay-per-view. But that whole thing was derailed when Kevin Nash had that apparent health issue that preventing him from competing at Night of Champions, which really sucked, and we got Triple H versus CM Punk at that pay-per-view instead, which is a blockbuster matchup in and of itself, but it's a matchup that should have been saved for Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, hell, even WrestleMania. I thought it was far too soon to go back to that matchup at Night of Champions. Not even go back to it, but, fast forward to that matchup at Night of Champions and have Triple H go over clean, of all things. Not clean, I guess, but there's so much fucking interference in that contest, but to have Triple H go over it all was really mind-boggling to me. But even still, we had this matchup here I thought was great. Del Rio cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase. I thought was a very nice... It wasn't really a shocker, but it was a nice moment for what it was. Del Rio at the time was still over as a heel before they destroyed his fucking momentum a month later at Night of Champions, which still pisses me off to this day, and I'll get to that in my Night of Champions 2011 review at some point within the next month or so. But, even still, a great matchup between Punk and Cena. A hell of a way to go out the show with the changing of the hands of the WWE Championship and the return of Kevin Nash. So two new world champions crowned on the show in Randy Orton and Alberto Del Rio. And a hell of an undercard as well. Mark Henry and Sheamus, a very solid contest. A very fun opening matchup in the 6-man opening contest. Kelly and Beth Phoenix having a much better Divas matchup than I ever thought they would. And Wade Barrett and Daniel Bryan having a hell of a matchup as well, and I thought a very underrated contest indeed. So, with that being said, I thought this SummerSlam was a lot better than some people give it credit for. I think WWE.com, from what John at Heel by Design on Twitter has told me in the past, that he had told me that WWE.com had ranked this on their overall best SummerSlams of all time. They ranked this at number 10. Now, I'm not going to say it's number 1, but I do believe that it deserves to be much higher on the list than number 10, because I thought this was a great SummerSlam. Very few things to bitch about. The opening contest, like I said before, was great. Henry and Sheamus, good. Kelly and Beth Phoenix, good. Barrett and Daniel Bryan, great. Orton and Christian, fucking awesome. And CM Punk and John Cena, once again, fucking awesome. So there's really nothing much to nitpick about this event, because it really set the stage for what was to come in the the fall season of 2011, which was pretty bad, but this was at least a very exciting event that really set the tone for what was to come in coming months with Mark Henry's big push, and Kevin Nash coming back, and Del Rio as champion, and everything else that went on that year, and the latter half of that year, might I say. But, absolutely, I would recommend you going out of your way to watch SummerSlam 2011. If you've already seen it, go back and watch it again. It's a great event to relive. I know I enjoyed watching it back for the second or third time. A lot of great action, a lot of great storytelling, a lot of great feud progression and stuff like that. So, absolutely. What I would give this out of 10, maybe a 9, maybe an 8.5, but I thought this was an awesome show that is very underrated and definitely a pay-per-view that you should go out of your way to watch, especially since a lot of people say, the Money in the Bank pay-per-view from 2011 was one of, if not the single greatest pay-per-view of all time for WWE. And I'm not saying I disagree with that, but because that was the greatest pay-per-view in some people's opinion of all time, it really, overshadows SummerSlam from a month later. And I thought that was a great pay-per-view that you should relive on the WWE Network for, say it with me, only $9.99. But yeah, great pay-per-view. Watch it back when you get the chance. Awesome stuff. So that being said, and the next time I come to you on WrestleRant, I'll be reviewing SummerSlam 2013, last year's event. It's going to do it for my reviews of SummerSlam for this month. I very much enjoyed watching all these SummerSlams. And that's going to be coming up on... This is being put up on Tuesday. So that review is going to be up on Saturday, the final Saturday of August. And then I'm going to get into my Night of Champions reviews for the month of September. And maybe some Unforgiven events thrown in there as well. So as always, folks, thanks for watching. Always appreciate it. If you want to support the show, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Find me on the Twitter at WrestleRant. I'll be back in a couple more days with another review of SummerSlam for 2013. Enjoyed watching these pay-per-views. Hope you enjoy watching these videos as well. I'm Graham Jason Matthews, and I'll catch you in a few more days.